Hello, everyone. This is Dmitry Khan Vector Podcast at Berlin Buzzwords 2026. And I'm here together with Julien Nioche, who is one of the participants and a speaker. You gave a talk yesterday.
I did, yes.
How did it go?
Yeah, quite well, thank you, Dmitry. Yeah, it went well. I think it was well received. Got some very good feedback, so that's brilliant. And it's always a pleasure to be at Buzzwords anyway. I was at the very first one 16 years ago, which makes me feel pretty old. And I've been every so often, probably 5 times in total. And I absolutely love it. So, great community, great people, nice to catch up with, people I've met before. I suppose where I fit with the conference and everything is that, well, I've done open source all my life. And mostly web crawling and search historically. So I've been involved at various projects of the Apache Foundation. More recently, I suppose things around, I said web crawling. So I have a project called Stormcrawler, which I started probably 12 years ago. And Stormcrawler is, it's now at the Apache Foundation. It's used by quite a few organizations. But it's, the last 2-3 years, I suppose I've been working on something a little bit different. So the talk I gave yesterday was about SPRUCE, which is an open source project I started last year. And what SPRUCE is about is it's a platform that allows to enrich cloud usage reports. So it's probably not something that people necessarily know and everything, but if you have stuff running on AWS, as you in GCP, obviously you can get like a breakdown of all the activities you've done over a period of time.
Yes.
And that's useful. It's called FinOps. So looking at the financial cost of doing those operations on the cloud. And what SPRUCE does is that it uses the same information, so the descriptions of all the services you've used, and say how much data you've stored on S3 or the type of instances that you used on EC2. And what it does is that it uses open source data and other libraries to try and estimate. So it's not measuring, because we can't measure, but we try and estimate the environmental impact of those activities. And that's called Greenops. So it's the other side of the coin compared to FinOps. Instead of looking at the cost, we look at the impacts of doing these things, because whilst we know all the things we do in the digital world and on the cloud does have an environmental impact.
Absolutely.
You need energy to run those data centers.
Yep.
You need resources. You need the hardware. You need all those things. And it's even more acute now with AI sort of taking over everything. So these impacts are quite substantial, and organizations want to measure the impact and reduce it. Now the cloud providers, say AWS and everything, give you dashboards, and these, to be fair to them, got a little bit better in the last year or so. So now you can get like an overall picture of your carbon emissions from your cloud computing over a period of time, and that's okay. That's probably useful enough for reporting if you have to give a global figure of something, but it doesn't really give you actionable insights. It doesn't give you a way of reducing your emissions. It doesn't tell you, for instance, team X on product whatever has generated so much, or you've generated that much because of the instance types that you've been using and so on. So it's not a tool for Greenops. It doesn't allow you to make to change things, and then allow you to make a difference, really. So that's what SPRUCE is about. So SPRUCE is set open source, and what it does is that it takes those usage reports I mentioned earlier, enriches them with additional columns like energy estimates, carbon emissions, but water as well. So it's incredibly
used for cooling all the servers, right?
Absolutely. It's also used for for generating the electricity in the first place.
Right.
But that's not water that's used on site. That's water that's used somewhere else.
Yeah.
But being able to measure that is really important, especially that not all water is equal. If you're in Canada or Sweden or some place like that,
right.
Water is abundant. There's no pressure around the access to water as a resource. Whereas other parts of the world, like say Spain or even in the US, as we know, water is more critical then. And SPRUCE also allows to do that. Allows to
interesting.
Not just tell you, you've consumed like say 10 tons of water, but also you've consumed 10 tons of water in a place where it's critical.
Yeah.
And to my knowledge, it's not a feature that even the commercial Greenops providers do at the moment.
Right.
Which shows that open source for the win.
Why do you think, maybe I'm touching on a sensitive topic, but why do you think, cloud providers would not go as detailed? They have all the power, all the people to do this. Do you think it's not entirely in their interest, or?
Well, they probably don't want people to reduce their usage.
Right. Obviously, it goes against the cloud spend. Yeah.
Yes, and also it's I mean the way they measure things is different compared to SPRUCE. So they have obviously they can measure the electricity use of a whole data center and everything, but it's very much a top-down approach where they then try to attribute that energy usage to specific services, specific users. It's very much top-down.
Yeah.
Whereas SPRUCE is the other way around. It's bottom-up. So we know the resources that have been used. We have models that are or data that are estimates. They're not perfect. So again, we're making educated guesses.
Yeah.
And we sort of bubble up and aggregate that. Going up.
Since we are at a technical conference, can you help me understand a little bit more how SPRUCE gets deployed within a particular, let's say it's an enterprise sitting on top of a cloud, right? They take SPRUCE, and SPRUCE is open source. What is it actually? Is it like a set of packages that I plug in and wire into my software? Does it support anything? Does it support only something? Yeah.
Yes.
Just
so great question. So at the moment, SPRUCE supports various formats. It does AWS pretty well. We've just added Azure. It's a young project, so we're adding coverage as we go. But if you can cover AWS and Azure, it's a pretty good start already. And what we cover, I mean, the type of services that we cover, the coverage is not perfect. We don't have estimates for every single product, but we have pretty decent estimates for the main ones, like the computation, storage, and networking, and everything. So if you take like a random set of cloud usage for an arbitrary company, SPRUCE will probably be able to give estimates for like 80% of the costs. But there's always space for improvement. Now, to answer your question, I'm not sure I mentioned that, but SPRUCE is based on Apache Spark.
All right.
Which means that it scales beautifully. Spark is designed to handle
massive
amount of data. It scales, it's distributed. So the idea in open source in general, and I suppose in SPRUCE in particular, is not to reinvent the wheel. Very much trying to stand on the shoulders of giants by using things that are already established. So on the sort of deployment side and the way it's architectured, well, we use Apache Spark. Spark gives us out of the box things like it can handle Parquet files. Is what those usage reports usually are represented as. It scales, as I said. Also, it can get data straight from S3 and everything, which means that all these things we didn't have to implement for SPRUCE.
Right.
They were already available because we use Spark.
Right.
That's brilliant. So how do you run SPRUCE? How do you use it? Well, you have several options. One is you could deploy your own Spark cluster or pseudo cluster. It could just be you install Spark on your laptop and that's it. You have like a jar file that you download from you can either build or download, and you run that as a Spark job. Probably easier way for people playing with it, starting with it, is to just use Docker. You have a Docker image, and you just point it to your inputs with your your usage reports,
Yeah.
and that's it. You know,
Yeah.
you're in business. So pretty straightforward. Within 5 minutes, people can have those enriched data already. And last but not least, the beauty of using something like Spark is that it's a well-established project.
Yeah.
And therefore, it's available as a service. Say on AWS, you have Elastic MapReduce. You can just, on the command line, spin a Spark process on EMR, which will scale to your parts content,
right?
And handle your data straight from S3, for instance. The beauty of doing this is that, understandably, often organizations are quite reluctant to give access to their usage reports.
Obviously.
It's sensitive.
Yeah.
So it's easier for them just to use it within the sort of the AWS environment using EMR, for instance. The data never leaves their sort of
perimeter,
their perimeter.
right? Yeah.
So it is safe. It's quite, and it's nice because it allows them to, there are obviously commercial providers for the Greenops, and yes, their coverage better than Spruce. Some of their models are probably a bit more accurate and everything, fine. But at least Spruce allows, it gives people a starting point.
Yeah.
What I found with trying to implement Greenops in organizations and everything is that it is not necessarily a technical problem. It's a human problem. It's an organizational problem.
Yeah. Whether we measure it, like how transparent we are, or do you mean more?
Yes, or more like how do you change the culture in your organization so that you give the technical teams, because they're the ones who ultimately decide, what instance types are used, or where it runs and everything.
Yeah.
So how do you give them the visibility into their costs, but also their impact?
Yeah.
And then you empower them to make a difference, to take ownership of and to be accountable for their impact. And that's very much an organizational problem.
Oh yeah.
It's so Spruce helps with on the technical part by giving you the data in the first place. So then you ask me, how do we run Spruce, etc. What you get at the end of it is a set of enriched usage reports with the additional columns. Fine. What do you do with that? And I think the advantage of Spruce is that you're not tied into a specific dashboard or a specific report format. You have the data. You're free to use that in any way that works for you. And the idea very much with Greenops, and as I said, is to make the data visible.
Yeah.
And if it means that you build something that will, send, say, teams messages on Slack, reminding them that they have a resource that's not used at all, for instance, and everything, and not just that, but also saying, hey, this resource, you haven't used it, and also generates, say, 50 kilo of CO2 a month. You want to make the data sort of visible, pervasive, and hard to ignore. And Spruce, just by focusing primarily on the enrichment, gives you a way of just, you're not tied into anything. Having said that, Spruce out of the box comes with a simple dashboard that will just make it easier just to make things visible.
Yeah.
Again, the idea is that within 5 minutes, people can, assuming they have access to their data and their usage reports, then they're able to enrich that and visualize the impact, get a figure, get a sense of it all. So we have two things. We have a simple dashboard that sort of allows you to break down by region and type of services that are used, but also break down by user tags. And that's really important because on the when you're using the cloud, people tag the resources. You tag, for instance, your an EC2 server or something and say, hey, this is
the purpose of usage, right?
Department X, product X, environment Y.
Yeah.
And that's really important because for FinOps and Greenops, because that's what allows you to attribute things. Otherwise, there's something, it has an impact, you don't know if you can do anything.
Right.
So the dashboards, and also we have something that generates the static reports and everything. Just starting points. And again, it's like a conversation starter. It's like, okay, imagine, you go to an organization, they want to have some sense of their impacts and which parts are responsible for what. Within 5 minutes, we can have these things. And again, it's a starting point. It's
for discussion within the organization. Now, I love so many topics you covered there. Like one of them, yeah, you may say that Greenops is like a forcing function to kind of like stop the progress in a way, but that's not true. It actually gives you like a tool to maintain hygiene of what you do, right? Because if you left a server running by accident, right, you should know about that.
Yes.
Of course, I'm sure that like in some mature organizations, they probably have processes identifying these things, but the forcing function there is likely cost rather than, I presume, rather than the impact on the planet. But having both is so important, right?
Absolutely. Which is why, as I said, FinOps and GreenOps are usually operated by the same teams. The problem with FinOps is that, yes, you can tell teams, when they don't use stuff or when how much it costs and everything. Ultimately, for the software people, the technical teams, they might care, but they're also busy, and it's not their money.
Exactly. Right.
It's more a management problem in their mind.
Yeah.
However, and that's where GreenOps to me I think is really important, and that's why it is important for organizations to have that. It's that gives you typical developer, there's that saying, in green software, people say, it's not my wallet, but it's my planet.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
And so if a developer, sees that, something costs so much, but then looks at the impact, puts it in perspective and say, okay, well, that's the equivalent of me driving to this and that. Yeah, most people now are obviously aware of the situation we're in with, with the climate emergency, do their best at an individual level. However, on the professional level, it feels quite disconnected. It's almost like you're
it's virtual, right? It's just running somewhere. I don't see how it warms up everything.
No.
It's just there.
And also for to be frank, the message from the cloud providers is don't worry, it's fine.
We will handle it for you, right?
Well, and there's no impact because the way they were reporting the impacts was taking into account offsetting by investing in renewable programs, and I think is very, very important, very valuable. But it gave that false impression that it's fine, it has no impact, which is definitely not the case.
No. There is, and then maybe we will like wrap up here, but like in general, I really enjoyed this topic. But one specific topic we discussed yesterday at the Search AI panel run by Charlie Hall was that basically, this AI thing, it's like a boom, right? Like, are we feeling like we're obsolete and all that? But AI also makes such a huge environmental impact, right? And there is not much discourse, at least not that I know, that pops in my feed where people say, oh, but by the way, how much we actually burn trees and whatnot, right? And like the topic that I think is not prevalent yet is that we are not optimizing these agentic workflows heavily because we are just pioneering them, right? So we're like plunging into this thing, but it might end up quite an expensive plunge in terms of the planet, right? So where do you see it on that topic?
There'd be loads of things to say on the subject. Obviously, AI is a hot topic, no pun intended. The difficulty is that on the one hand, there's opacity from the AI, so big players and everything, obviously don't report on energy and everything, because energy is at this stage doesn't matter to them, the energy behind it, and so they don't want. We also incentivized by them to use more and more. That will probably change now that with the at some point in the reality check they'll have to start charging for what it actually costs,
right?
And that might change that might curb the usage and everything. But for now it's quite the opposite. We're incentivized to use more and more, while at the same time the costs at the moment, they are paying for us to use it. But the impacts are not visible. So there's quite a lot. Obviously people see those AI data centers sort of being built and the way they're powered as well, often off grid, with just because there's again a reality check of the electricity grid is not able to provide. So like some very well-known famous cases of data centers being built next to a gas pipeline and generating energy with gas turbines on site, which is obviously terrible for air quality and not great from a carbon perspective. So there's opacity from those guys. So they are currently doing research and really good open source models trying to estimate the energy used by inference, for instance. I think. And I think there's more and more, but by and large it's still hard to know for a user to know the impact. But we're definitely seeing more now with calculators. Allows you to say for a million token, what's the estimate of energy? So there's quite a lot already, and we're seeing more and more in Spruce, because again, people can use can do AI inference through their cloud provider. So it's something that's built in the usage report. So we use data from a project called Ecologit, which gives us estimates of energy use. So it's obviously a fast-moving area and everything, but there's definitely things happening to try and make it more visible.
That's great. I mean, and it sounds that Spruce is quite versatile in a way that if now all of a sudden the whole world will do inference, which it seems the world is moving into, right? From training more to inference, with open models, with closed models, doesn't matter, but you will increasingly want to think about how much energy you spend, what impact you make on the planet. And so it sounds like Spruce has a bright future there. So yeah, great job.
Thank you.
Starting it.
Thanks. And being an open source project, it's a young project, but I'm already getting contributions from others and everything. There's definitely an interest, and it's also relies, as I said, on the whole ecosystem of other resources, other projects, like things like Boa Vista, which is a great organization. So we have those commons we're using, and trying to contribute to a good ecosystem for open source.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm great hearing that you're active and creating like new open source projects. And with like such a beautiful cause, beautiful goal as well.
Yeah, I think it is meaningful to me, and as I said, I've been doing open source all my life, so it's a perfect combination.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you, Julien. I really enjoyed the chat with you, and I hope you will enjoy the second day of Berlin Buzzwords.
Likewise,
and the rest of your stay here in Berlin. Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you all.
Bye.